Hi friends, it's Deanna Williston from Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm finally getting into the Bible in a Year. This is the English Standard Version Catholic edition printed by the Augustine Institute. I was dying to get my hands on this and see what it's like. You know, everybody's been so excited about Father Mike Schmidt's Bible in a Year podcast. A lot of people have been doing Dr. Taylor Marshall's Bible in a Year reading plan, which I have over here as well. And then this one came out that was a reader. So literally, instead of waiting for the podcast to come out and having to buy a separate workbook or buying the Bible that goes with it with Father Mike Schmidt, you don't have to do that. But if you want to do the full program, now they have that, and there's a retreat, and it's getting really complicated for people, and some people are loving that, some people aren't. Dr. Taylor Marshall's, let me grab that here. You're going to look at the date. Sorry, it's in the front of the Bible and I jumped to the back for some reason. It's basically a calendar. You find your date, you go over, you get your Old Testament reading, your Psalm and Wisdom reading, and your New Testament reading, and you just follow it down. You're supposed to be crossing them off as you go along. I don't tend to have a working pen or pencil next to me, and honestly, it's small print. So I have not been marking it off because I'm afraid of marking off the wrong one. And so I was waiting to see if this plan, Dr. Taylor Marshall's plan with his new St. Thomas Institute, aligned with this new Augustine Institute Bible in a Year. What I found out really quickly, though, talking to friends, was we first need to discuss that small print there, the English Standard Version Catholic edition, the actual Bible that it's based off of. So this review is going to be 2 videos. I've tried to film it. It's impossible to get it all in one. So we're doing 2. The first one, we're going to talk about that ESV-CE. The second one, we're going to talk about the actual format of the Bible in a Year concept. So I'm sorry, we're going to be towards the end of January before we're doing this. But if you found that maybe the Bible in a Year program you were doing wasn't working, or you just couldn't get into it, or maybe you just want to supplement it a little bit, this is going to be a great option for you because maybe you're starting late and want to look at it in January, or you're watching this at a different time of year entirely and just curious what this is about. So again, this is by Augustine Institute. They publish this Bible in a Year in several different colors. This is considered covers. This is considered the Tree of Life cover. It took me a while to figure out this is 4 seasons of a tree. See here, spring, summer, fall, winter. It's really hard to see, but there is a tree trunk embossed in there as well. It's available in several different covers, even 2 leather ones, but it's essentially the same book. Let's get into that ESV. Now, one of the things in trying to learn more about the ESV myself, I found that most sites that review it basically quote what's exactly in that Bible about it. So it's hard to find anyone really critically talking about it. And while I do have a master's in pastoral studies, that's not the same as a theology degree or an outright biblical scholar. So I have very much a little bit more than the average layman training, but this is a new translation to me. I'm going to do the best I can. If anybody else wants to weigh in the comments or give us other resources for it, awesome. So what I really found out, it does have an imprimatur and a nihil obstat from the bishops of India. And what year was that? 27. I think they gave it in 2020, but the edition was finished in 2017. No, the imprimatur is 2017. Okay. The imprimatur and the nihil obstat are from 2017. This Bible in a Year itself was published in 2020. Whew. Okay. It is based off of the translation of the ESV that was done, the English Standard Version, in 2001 by Crossway, which is a subdivision of Good News Publishing. It says that they got the idea in the 1990s, Crossway, to maybe start a new translation. And they say a new translation, but then they talk about how it is part of the English translation stream. So the ESV comes from the RSV, and not the 1952 version, the adapted 1971 version, which came from the RV, which was in 1885, which came from the King James from 1611 and William Tyndale's in 1526. So that's the stream they're using. They're using the English translations that already existed as a foundation for the next one, and then changing it slightly depending on their objectives. So they also say it was compared with original Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. And what they did to that 1971 RSV is they updated the language, but they tried to keep the qualities of previous English translations. And that's said again and again. And one of the reasons for that is so many people, especially Protestants, have memorized huge swaths of Bible verses, right? Huge sections of the Bible, as well as have studied it and based some of their doctrine on, right, on previous English translations. And so if they change that translation, that's going to change there's going to be a lot of things coming down the line. They didn't explicitly say that, but that's kind of in there. And so they try to keep the qualities of previous English translations. They call their philosophy as being essentially literal versus the dynamic equivalence model that some Bibles take. They say they're a word for word or not a thought for thought. So much of this section, and this is a humongous section in the beginning. In the beginning of this Bible, there's a huge section in here devoted solely to explaining it. I'm just giving you an overview. So they're but so much of it is in quotes. It does not make me feel comfortable. So all the reviews except one I found online basically quoted the ESV itself, and the ESV itself, half of it was in quotes, it felt like, at least in the philosophy and technical sections. And it was like, what is going on? So there's that. Pre-publication. It does say that there were some accusations early on against it. This is from Wikipedia. In 1999, there were some feminists claiming that there might have been some gender-neutral language. So the gender-neutral language, you're going to get that to that in a bit. And they let us know that they are not a council on biblical manhood and womanhood project. I don't know. So the gender-inclusive language was an issue, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Who was on the committee? There was an original committee. It goes on to tell you that there were I think over 100 scholars who were included in it. What does it say here? They say the committee removed this is in quotes, every trace of liberal influence that had caused such criticism from evangelicals when the RSV was first published in 1952. Although they also state that much of the 1971 text left unchanged by the committee is simply the best of the best in the King James Version tradition. Again, it's letting you know that's going on. Their goal with the gender-neutral language, are we going to jump into that? Let's stop and talk about the grammar. Sometimes in ancient grammar, they use the words and had really long run-on sentences. It's a literary form that we don't use anymore. And so to break that up, instead of saying and, sometimes they might use a different conjunction just to break it up, so it wasn't just to make it more varied for our modern ears. When they get to the gender language, they went for being literal. So if there was no masculine indicated, even if it said any man in the RSV, if there was no masculine indicated in the original language, they changed it to any one. Same thing, if it was men, they tried to see if that men was really men and women, or if it was really men. If it was just men, they left it as men. If it was men and women, they changed it to people. They left man as man if the masculine was indicated in the older languages. And they also used man if it was human as opposed to God, if there was some kind of comparison there. Brother was used mainly in a familial term, to indicate people who had the same father, but it was usually for men who had the same father because it's usually used to indicate inheritance or lineage. But I think they say St. Paul uses he uses the word brothers when he means the men and women, the children of God, the adopted sons and daughters of God. But when it's used like that, when it's something that's a little off and might be confusing to you, they say that it's going to be in the footnotes, not to worry. Now, is it in the footnotes in the Bible in a year as well as in the standard straight up, just normal ESV? I don't know that. I haven't come across to that yet, but it says that we try to use footnotes whenever things might cause confusion for you. The word he, again, it says to me to look that up. Why didn't I take notes on that? Let's see here. So we're looking for page 22, Roman numeral 22. Oh my gosh, it is very much in the beginning of the book, and it's just a little bit fiddly with, thin pages to get to. So let's look here, almost there. 22, at the top of the page, it says he. The inclusive use of the generic he, I'm not exactly sure what generic he means, has also been regularly retained because this is consistent with similar usage in the original language, and because an essentially literal translation would be impossible without it. So sorry, it was there originally, even though it didn't indicate masculine, and we're going to leave it because we're trying to be literal. So that happened occasionally. In each case, the objective has been transparency to the original text, allowing the reader to understand the original on its own terms rather than in the terms of our present day culture. Again, they're going to have footnotes for us. Then they had a whole section on translation of specialized terms, and that got very detailed. So again, this is all written out. I have so many things sitting here, friends. Sorry. There's so many things written out here. You're really going to want to read it yourself, but I'm giving you an overview in case this is a deciding factor for you. So special terms, like the word of which the consonants are YHWH. When that was encountered, they translated it as Lord. When they encountered the word Adonai, they used that as Lord as well, but when it was Adonai and then YHWH, they translated that as Lord God. So they're giving you the details on the little words, the different words for God and how they translated them and why. And so they basically, it sounds like they made a codified system and they stuck to it. Christos originally, so further back in the Old Testament, might just mean anointed one, but as it came to be known as Savior, so they tried to decide which one they were saying then, and to use the correct one for that time it was written. I think that's what they were saying there. They also had difficulty with some ancient practices and traditions that do not have modern equivalents. So they really tried to be nuanced there. There were probably many different words for which we would just say slave, but there's many different nuances in there, and so they did their best. They also addressed the capitalization of God's pronouns that was not traditional in the English translations, and they are following the stream of English translations, so they don't capitalize pronouns for God. Then there's a whole section on the word behold. You can read that yourself, why they chose to translate it how they did. It's all in there. So they give you justifications for a lot of what they did in that opening segment, as well as in footnotes throughout the text. Then we have the Catholic edition, and I'm telling myself to come over here and look that up again. And why? Because it's just pretty detailed. One of the things I did note that the ESV started out as a 2007 version, and then there was a 2016 edition, and then they said, so 2007, 2011, 2016, and they said, no more, we're not going to change it ever again. And then they were like, ooh, yeah, we may do it from time to time. We may still do it. So, what does it say here? From 2007, made some minor changes to the 2001. This is from Wikipedia. Then in 2011, it says they changed fewer than 500 words in total throughout 275 verses from the 2007 text. And then the 2016 is considered the third revision, and they called it the permanent text edition. That didn't stay. They changed 52 words throughout 29 versions from the 2011 text. And Yeah, although they had said the text of the ESV Bible will remain unchanged in all future editions printed and published by Crossway, but then the very next month they abandoned that to, quote, allow for ongoing periodic updating of the text to reflect the realities of biblical scholarship, such as textual discoveries or changes in English over time. So let's go back. Which edition is this from? So the Catholic edition comes from the first edition of this, the 2001 ESV. So there's already been three corrections after that, but the Catholic edition is off the first one. What does that mean? I don't honestly know, because I don't have a detailed list of all those changes. Let's see. And part of the purpose in making this Catholic edition is so that the bishops in other English-speaking countries had a Catholic Bible in English that they could use in liturgical purposes. There's copyright issues and various things going on, so they wanted one that they could use specifically. And so this is one that's used in India, I think, this is according to Wikipedia, so take it as you want. The ESV-CE is considered the Augustine Bible. They published that in 2019. In the church in India in 2020 started using the lectionary with that as its text, excluding the Book of Psalms, which uses the Grail Psalms translation instead. In July 2020, the Bishops' Conference of Scotland approved preparation of a new lectionary based on the ESV-CE, and the Catholic Bishops' Conference of England and Wales is also approving their own lectionary that's going to be based on this as well. So if you're in those countries, this could be a really great selection for you to be studying the Bible in a year, because this is what you're going to be hearing anywhere that you have Mass in English. So here we go. Note to the Catholic edition. There is a huge team of scholars, they're letting you know, of Catholics and Protestants in every portion of the work, which I don't see why they did that for the Catholic edition when there were already so many involved in Protestants available in the original translation of the ESV. Again, it's going to go into way greater detail here. They're again going to talk about the history of translations a little bit. They talk about St. Jerome, and they do let you know over time more than one version of his Vulgate circulated, and they don't really go into that, but that's kind of dropped. Like, I feel like that's a diss to the Vulgate right there. So now we don't know which Vulgate is the first one. It's just that one little one-liner. And they don't expand on that for another two paragraphs, but it does come back. It lets you know about the Deuterocanonical books. And this is taking a very politically correct view on what happened to why the Catholics have a different number of books than the Protestants. This is very PC paragraph explaining it here. So I'm not going to go into that. That's a fight for another day. But that is in here. They explain it, why they did it, why they think that. And they're saying due to the differing editions of the Vulgate, see above, it was necessary to determine which books to include. They make no real talk about the Council of Trent being an effort to really clarify and substantiate Catholic doctrine and practices in light of the Protestant Reformation, where people were straying. They almost make it sound like, oh, now Catholics just thought maybe we should sit down and think about this. So that's my take on it. Again, this is the part of it that I have a little bit of trouble with, but it does tell you that they did determine it. Vatican I Council in 1870 reaffirmed the list, and that they decided to intersperse the texts where they would be in the Bible. They aren't a separate section of the Bible, like these are the Catholic additions to the Bible. They're not separated, they are interspersed. So there is that. That's good. Textual basis, it does say they looked at the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek texts for their work. They used the I'm not going to pronounce this right, the Göttingen Septuagint. Why can't I say that word? as the textual basis for the Deuterocanonical books. This is on page 28 in Roman numerals. In a special case of Tobit, they used the longer Greek text supplemented by the shorter Greek text and the old Latin version where they needed to. It's very technical as to why they did it. Textual format, they're letting you know if it's something that's not going to appear in a Protestant Bible, especially Esther and Daniel, they're going to letter those verses rather than number them, and they're going to be in italics just to let you know, hey, this is something a little different. The Word of God. Oh, and then that's the same ending as the other one. So that's it. That's all I'm going to go into for that. I hope that helps you out. I'm still confused about the ESV, but am I excited to give it a try? Yes, I am absolutely excited to give it a try. I will probably be reading it kind of along with having my Douay-Rheims, especially because I've noticed there's a lot of notes in here. Some of these notes are actually confusing to me, whereas they're more clarified in here. So I may be going back and forth. I also have an RSV and a Jerusalem Bible. So I don't really depend on any one. If I had to pick one at this point in my life, I'd say the Douay-Rheims, but I'm willing to give this guy a try. And yeah, I'm looking forward to really exploring and seeing some explanations. Oh, right, I had marked Psalm 23 because that one's a big deal changer for a lot of people. So it's Psalm 23 in the ESV, but of course in the Douay-Rheims it's going to be Psalm 22. So Psalm 22 in the Douay-Rheims says, "The Lord ruleth me," and then there's immediately a note, "ruleth me." In Hebrew, "is my shepherd," meaning to feed, to guide, and to govern me. So that is the only note for that entire psalm that's in this one. Yep, that is in here. Sorry, that's my bookmark for Bible in a Year. With Dr. Taylor Marsh one. Don't want to lose that bookmark. So the Lord ruleth me, and I shall want nothing. He has set me in a place of pasture. He hath brought me up on the water of refreshment. He hath converted my soul. I love that line in here. He hath converted my soul. He hath led me on the paths of justice for his own name's sake. For though I should walk in the midst of the shadow of death, I fear no evils, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they have comforted me. Thou hast prepared a table before me against them that afflict me. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, and my chalice which inebriateth me, how goodly it is. And thy mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and that I may dwell in the house of the Lord unto length of days. And so that's clearly not the one that most people have memorized. So let's look and see how close this one is, and if that helps you any. It says immediately, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." Note. This is number 4. Is on this page. Hebrew says beside waters of rest. He restores my soul. So this one says he converts. I think it says he converts my soul. And this one says he restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness. There's another note. Or in right paths. For his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of the death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Oops. The valley of the shadow of death had a note, or the valley of deep darkness. And it says, surely, there's a note, or only. So surely goodness and mercy, or only goodness and mercy. But goodness and mercy also have a footnote. So goodness and mercy, number 3. Steadfast love. It could be goodness and steadfast love. Shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell, there's another note, or shall return to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And then after forever, it has a note, Hebrew for length of days. Phew. So this one had like a ton of little footnotes about why they chose to translate it the way they did. And that's just Psalm 23, one of the most famous Psalms, right? And the Douay-Rheims only had the one note, but the only part that in the Douay-Rheims version that kind of gets me is when it has, thou hast prepared a table before me against them that afflict me. And in the ESV, it has that as you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. It sounds a little easier in here, like, oh, maybe God's He's giving you riches and refreshing you, preparing you a meal. He's sustaining you right there. Your enemies are right there watching, and here's your God taking care of you. And over here, it's a little bit more difficult in the Douay-Rheims. Thou hast prepared a table before me against them that afflict me. So in here, it's almost like God is sustaining you, yes, but he's like building you up in front of your enemies even. So it's a little bit different. That's just one example. Again, we're going to look at this a little bit more in depth. Hopefully next week, the videos on this Bible in a year are a little bit more entailed than I normally do, but I know people have been asking me so many questions, personal friends and stuff, so I really wanted to get into it with you, and I hope that helps you. If you have any questions, remember I'm going to be doing that next week, so get those questions in now, and maybe I can address them in next week's video. God bless you, friends. Bye.